Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wasalam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of Muslimi Meets. We're here with a wonderful guest, Brother Stephen Zhou, mashallah, who's going to be joining us to talk a little bit about his work. We also have Ashley Pearson Khan and my good friend and co-host, Brother Yusuf Fakiri. Now, we were talking a little bit before the interview about some of the, we should say, institutionalized Islamophobia that we see plaguing our community currently. You wrote a very interesting article about the CRA actually targeting Muslim charities. And we know that for people that don't know, Canadian Revenue Agency, they're responsible for kind of overseeing the different charities and making sure, everyone's doing what they're supposed to. But, for all the Muslim charities out there, and there are so many of them, they are constantly facing that fear of losing their ability to write tax receipts and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about the issue that you saw and what made you want to kind of write that article?
No, I think it is institutionalized racism to a large degree. Like, even if just by effect, like our community is being hurt by it a lot. And the issue is that because a lot of the mainstream media, they're not familiar with our community, so they end up not reporting on a lot of it. Our organization, National Council of Canadian Muslims, we put out a report maybe last year or relatively recently, in recent years, called Layered Suspicion. It's in conjunction with the University of Toronto, where we go into the Canada Revenue Agency's tendencies when it comes to their anti-terror mandate, and how that kind of like generates a lot of suspicion against a lot of our organizations. Basically, sometimes it's very clear about why, other times it's not so clear. Our constituents don't really know what's going on. It's very confusing. And right now there is a promise on the federal government's part to review the mandate of the Research and Analysis Division of the CRA, which is responsible for anti-terrorism financing. My report was kind of based on that. But if in Canada, if you're a Muslim organization or anyone with issues with the CRA, your bank can kick you out.
Wow.
Like our banking financial institutions have so much power. It's technically not a right for you to be with them, even though it's a human right to be able to bank.
Right.
But legally, it's a privilege to be able to bank somewhere.
Wow.
So if they want to kick you out and give you no reason for it, that happens all the time. I can say, without mentioning names, because I'm bound to that, one of the biggest masajid in our area in Toronto cannot bank anywhere. That's
Really?
Millions and millions of dollars of money from donors and everywhere else. They can't even bank in some of the credit unions. They've been banned from the major banks. I mean, we've only got 6 banks, right?
Yeah.
So if one bank kicks you out, all the other banks are alert. Often, like all 6 banks will ban you.
Wow.
as an organization. And sometimes you can't even get credit unions to do it. It's not just banks. It's also your payment processors online. If you're, let's say, a humanitarian organization, you take money, that money becomes humanitarian aid for people in Syria or something. But the Canadian government or whoever else is nervous about Syria, you're going to get in trouble. You might get in trouble for that. And you might get your Stripe or whoever else handling your online donations might say, we don't want to do this for you anymore.
Right.
So how are you going to take in money? Many of these financial issues exist. They're under the radar. People are afraid to talk about them because that might generate even more bans. And so it's something that can really hurt the community at a structural level. And we've not began to really address it.
Stephen, as I'm hearing this, it's just the word ominous continues to ominous, and the word or the sentence of a lack of scrutiny, within the system. The CRA, for folks that don't know, this agency does not have the proper legislative oversight. So when these constant Muslim organizations that are losing their charity status, and for the audience, listen, the charity status for these that's their lifeline. This is one of the pillars of this deen. Let's talk about this. This is how the community contributes in their respective centers, right? So we have to know there's a cataclysmic link to all of this. And for folks that don't know, one of the biggest Islamic organizations called the Muslim Association in Canada is taking the CRA to task. So when we're talking about this, Stephen, as I'm hearing you, Why is it that the community is not aware of these overreaching powers of the CRA, or the fact that we're not getting much of a media traction the way we want? Like, what do you say to that? And why should we continue to talk about this?
It's a niche kind of like Muslim issue, like if you spend enough time in the community, there are just issues that are like, especially from a reporter's or media's perspective, it's just hard to talk about. Like I when I did that article for basically our Medium page, National Council of Canadian Muslims Medium page, it's the first article ever written about this like issue of people getting debanked. But actually, okay, that's a Muslim issue, but it's like also an issue that affects a lot of non-Muslim Canadians.
Absolutely.
Just getting kicked out by your bank and having nowhere to go. That happens, right? But it happens at an institutional level for us. And an organization that has gone through issues like this doesn't want to talk about it. Because if they talk about it and it's another headline, another bank, another credit union might see it and say, oh my God, I don't want to get embroiled in a terrorist organization, or like, somebody who's seen as a terrorist organization, funding terrorists abroad or something, right. Or like getting into some process or sending money somewhere where it looks like you might be sending money to a banned organization or something. That's what happened to one of the major masajids in our area. Like, this is like a major mosque that can't put his money, struggles to put his money anywhere.
And that's permanent. They can't ever go
Yeah,
back
I
and
think
say,
so.
try again, right? It seems like it's
they have
probably a
tried.
permanent thing.
You can talk. They have talked to their regional manager, bank manager. Sometimes you get a meeting with maybe some like VP somewhere, but I don't know of any reversals in decisions. And okay, sometimes you get banned by one bank, TD will take you. Or like you get
Right.
banned by RBC, Scotia might take you. That does happen. But sometimes the CRA related headlines are so bad, like no bank will take you. And some credit unions will take you. That's that case I was talking about. But we outlined 6 cases where something like this has happened to our biggest charities. And how do you want to destroy a community? That's what you do, right?
You said sometimes they don't get an explanation. Out of those 6 cases, did anybody get an explanation
No.
of why?
Not really. No.
Wow.
The thing is, Ottawa has implemented laws where they are strict about money laundering. That is, you can understand that. You don't want people like laundering money, like doing stupid stuff or like illegal stuff. But like that means the banks are on high alert. And banks have a lot of different ways, and each bank is different. But one bank versus another bank have different ways of assessing risk of a client. They do that for just about everyone. If you're Muslim, of course, they're going to vet you. Like, because of all the stigma, post 9/11 stigma, and the fact that a lot of our masajid don't have good bookkeeping. And they're not used to keeping like exact, like accounting. So once you're in the crosshairs, and let's say your books you don't have your ducks in a row, you put yourself in a position where you can get debanked. Like, they'll tell you within a month, you get a letter in your mail or an email saying you better take out every cent from your checking account or saving account, all of your accounts in our bank within a month. I don't care where else you put it, or else we'll take it out for you or something.
SubhanAllah.
That's happened many, many times. Yeah.
Well, for a lot of Canadians, and you mentioned this is an issue that affects non-Muslims as well.
Yeah.
What are some of the solutions? Like, what would they do in those circumstances?
I think the solutions it's just like, what are the solutions? That's such a good question. Like, the banks this is the world we live in. We live in a money world, Our financial institutions have the most power, and they are, not to say that it's illegitimate or whatever, they do everything for everyone. But at some point you have to say, like, you can't live without banking. You can't get a job if you can't like take your wages into a direct deposit, right? Yeah. And so many other things. Like, at what point are we going to recognize like this is a human right and there should be protections? But Ottawa, it's such a new kind of conversation. Like, advocates are saying like, okay, let's just not bank in these banks. Like, let's find alternative ways of banking, put it into some kind of community trust
Maybe
or whatever.
crypto or something like that. I don't know.
I
Crypto
mean that
would be a
that has
solution.
his own dangers.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah.
Yeah.
With all that's been happening these days.
Yeah.
But there's not even the beginning of a conversation of a solution
Mm.
because we haven't even diagnosed the totality of the problem yet. I'm not just talking about Muslims, but for everyone. Right?
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Right.
It, seeing these, it almost seems like some of these nefarious activities at an institutional level that's targeting the Muslim community seems to continue be ongoing without being addressed, right? And we talk about accountability, and the one thing I want to come back to in terms of how we can get involved in, I mean, one of the stat that I saw is that since 2015, this division that you alluded to, RAD, short firm, that has the ability to take the charity status from these Muslim organization, I think it's 50 or more than 50 of the organization that lost their charity certificate were Muslim organizations, Stephen.
That's 80% of the
So 80%, there you go.
of the people that have
Wow.
endured some kind of punitive measures from RAD has I think has
80%.
been something like that
I
as
read it
being
here.
Muslim or whatever. So okay, I mean now this is why you should support your civil liberties organizations. Okay,
We're gonna get there, yeah.
the National Council of Canadian Muslims are even advocating about this. In the 2021, like last year, the Action Summit against Islamophobia and hate. This is one of the major community asks that the federal government re-litigates, re-examines its anti-terror financial mandate, especially when it comes to CRA, because a lot of the times it's unclear why the Muslim organizations have been targeted or they've been punished, and some of the decisions we feel are unfair. And of course, the CRA lacks a lot of oversight. There are a lot of issues. And right now, it's combined with the debanking thing, it's too precarious.
Absolutely.
Like you have millions of dollars, you have to take it out within a month. You have nowhere to put it. Like, it'll destroy your organization,
Right.
Yeah.
Where can people find out more about your writing and about this issue in particular? Is there any recommended reading, any books, any documentaries, anything you'd
No,
recommend?
this is such a new. I mean, I'm proud to say, like, we've done the first sort of like investigations on this. Like, I've been hired for about a year now to help look into some of these issues because I have a background in just investigations and journalism. And so you can go to the nccm.medium.com to find our debanking piece, and you can download the PDF of our joint report with the University of Toronto called Layered Suspicion, which is on the research and RAD, Research and Analysis Division, and the CRA, basically. So you can read those two things.
Well, this is a very interesting topic, and I'm sure one
Alhamdulillah.
that we're going to have to talk a lot more about as a community moving forward.
And make
inshallah.
dua for us.
Yes, yes.
Inshallah.
Allah give you
More than
tawfiq,
anything, make
inshallah.
dua for us. Support us. Support your masajid. Inshallah, the money you don't need is not good for you. So
Yeah.
better, people of knowledge, people who have a mandate to do good things, that use it for good things, and inshallah, things get resolved, inshallah.
I like how we turned this into a fundraiser. That was very good.
No.
Very smooth. I'm just kidding.
I know.
Anyway, Stephen, Zakallah khair for your time. Really
I
appreciate
better
it.
get back to work,
Inshallah.
Yeah.
Thank you all for watching. We'll see you again on another episode of Muslimi Meets. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.